Chof Elul, Tafshin Samech Tes. We're learning Samech Tes from the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Gafni, on page Nun Aleph.
So we were dealing generally with the relationship with the nefesh and the guf, and we saw that was a sachtus, a joining together and a unity of a very consummate sort. And the truth is, it's put down in other places that the unity of the guf and the neshama, the guf and the nefesh, is one of the highest forms of unity that we can imagine, despite the fact, as we're going to point out right at the bottom of the page, that they're two opposites, to the point that it's compared in certain places and siddhas to the unity of the skin with the body. That even though the body and the skin are like two separate entities, but if you take the skin and you take the body, in other words, that the skin and the body are absolutely united, that you can't really have one without the other. And the nefesh and the guf are such that you can't really imagine one without the other. And that's why the name Odom is only applicable to that union. As if somehow or another we can imagine the guf being separate from the body, then we don't call it a nefesh or Odom. And similarly, if we just have a guf on its own without a nefesh, then he's no longer called a Odom. It's maybe called the guf of a Odom, but it's not called a Odom. It's only when the two unite. So therefore we see that there's an interreaction between the two of them, of two united entities, ad krikat. Where have you been up to now, boy?
In the share in the past few days.
Huh?
In the share the past few days.
He means in this last period.
I mean, what are you doing just walking now?
I was at the dormitory.
I see. So what was your intention now on coming now?
To learn.
Huh?
To learn.
I understand. I mean, you must have known that you were going to walk in late. Huh? If you were coming, why didn't you just come 20 minutes earlier? Huh?
I woke up.
You were asleep?
Yeah.
I see. All right. You've been taking medicine or something?
Yeah. See?
No, but I mean, what made you sleepy? Was the medicine?
No, it wasn't the medicine. I was trying to pass the time.
Huh?
I was trying to pass the time by sleeping. Because it hurts when I'm awake, so...
What hurts? From both sides?
No, just one.
And have you had a diagnosis from a doctor?
They said, they gave me over the counter. They said,
Over the counter?
Yeah.
Over the counter's just a chemist.
Right, they didn't want me to go to the doctor.
Pharmacist.
They didn't want me to go to the doctor because it would be 300 shekel to go. But I have insurance, so maybe if this doesn't work, then I'm going to go back. So,
what they give you over the counter, I could also give you. So, I mean, you need a diagnosis. What is the problem? Particularly if it's hurting you. I mean, if it's really hurting you, then could you have an infection? The ears are very sensitive to infections. Very sensitive. It's an infection in the ear can be quite nasty. It can affect the eardrum and a lot of things. I'm not saying, but it's something that you should have examined. They've got these things, they're a little light. They put it in your ear and they can know in a second what is going on. It's not a big deal. I think you should see a doctor. I mean, you've had it now for a couple of days. So we see then that union is an absolute union to the point that they interact one with the other, more, as you might say, not necessarily deliberately, but since there is this interaction, there can be a deliberate effort on the part of one side, as you might say, to improve or some way intensify its put into the unity. And that's what we saw, that up till now we were talking about how the Kli is essential to the type of Gilui of the Nefesh. And we saw that depending on the type of the Kli and the state of the Kli, whether it was elevated and edel, or whether it was coarse and not so shat to Ruchnias, well, that affected the Gilui of the different koiches of the Guf, even to the point, as we saw yesterday, later in the class, the union of Toiv Ayin and Ra Ayin, the idea of good eye or bad eye, literally to use the expression, being tolui in or dependent in the combination and the arrangement of the different physical makeups or factors inside the chema of the ayin. However, we saw that if a mensch, or that's what we're about to learn now, if a mensch would have put in a lot of effort from one of the koiches, hapnimim, the oiris that are going into those kelim, then that can have an effect on the keli and improve its ability to be mekabel from the earth. And similarly, we're going to see the other way around, that it's possible for the kli, as it were, to make certain efforts or have certain changes within itself, which will make it more worthy to be mekabel the earth of the nefesh. That's what we see Beklal, what's called Aveda in Chassidus. What Aveda is the idea that the mensch changes his being, he works at his being to develop and refine the clay haguf, the kelim of his guf, to make them better and more elevated kelim to receive the oil of the nefesh. That's the type of thing that we're getting at, and we're holding about the middle of the page, where we spoke about the Toiv Ayin, was Lafi the hardcover of the Choyma of the Ayin, Areish Lafi even Zichuch HaKli, according to the purification or the readiness of the Kli to receive a higher thing like Ruchnias, Kain Hu Gilui HaNefesh. So we see that the Kli determines the intensity and the state of the Gilui of the koiches of the nefesh. Now he says the other way around, Kamoi Kain Yesh Lahefach. And that's what we were just trying to be masbid, that the yichud between the two is so intense, between the guf and the nefesh, that just by functioning they interact intimately one with the other, to the point that they affect one the other. And if that's moving, that if there'll be an intensification of effort, literally on the part of one as regards the other, then that can alter the whole oifen hagilui. We were talking about that mitzad the kli. Now we're talking mitzad the oir and its effect on the kli. Shegilui nefesh poil nazichuk be'akli, that the intensity of the gilui, the nefesh, can cause a zichuk in the kli, which will mean, as a result, that the nefesh will be able to reveal itself more effectively in the kli. וכמוי שהאור פנימי מצחצח חוצי הכלי מבפנים והאור מקיף מבחוץ. Now this is a famous principle brought down in the original, is that the Lashon is in the Kisvei Arizal. It occurs in certain parts of the Eitz Chaim, that the oil which is pnimi, the oil which is mislabish in the kelim, literally polishes the keli halfway from inside. And when the oil enters the keli, then it literally prepares or elevates from Lashon polishing, making more delicate and more edel, half of the kli, as it were, mibif. Come on, we're not talking about measuring in centimeters. What we mean is kilo, a half aspect of that kli, mibafnim, v'er makif mibachutz, and the makif polishes literally half of the kli mibachutz. So we're going to have to be mafarish. What does it mean, oyer pnimi and oyer makif? When I get to the koiches of the nefesh. Somebody who's all the time busy with concepts of the seichel, the etzem material, physical state and makeup of his brain elevates itself and becomes more edel and more ready to receive muskoles. Like we pointed out last night, that there are all sorts of delicate aspects of the brain which are given to change. Like we saw that concept, we were talking about it last night, and we'll see it mentioned here also, that it's possible to change the type, the arrangement of the different physical materials in the brain, that they actually expand and become more ready for Giloi Eira Seichel. And therefore he said, Mizdachik, the Choyme, through the Hashpah of the Seichel itself. Kafi Teva Chush Aisatzke Shaloi, Im Ba'emek B'yoisa, Oy Ba'erech O Reichev, Kafi Eifen Azeh, Naso Ishtanus B'chema Klei Moyach Shaloi. He said it depends on the type of mind, the person. That every person has a certain chush, a sense. A chush means like a adapt. How do you call it? Not what's the word? An atiyah. How do you call it? That I can't think of the word in English. A leaning in the seichel as to how they use the seichel more effectively, or as to how they tend to reveal the koach of their seichel. And therefore he said there are some people that their chush, that their, what you might call their general leaning in their seichel, the general sense of seichel, is to be busy with it, be'oimek. In other words, they deal more with the profundity of the matter, because they have a iskabris in their makeup of their brain, according to the way the Eivishter gave it to them, in moyach hadas, that they have more shy to this concept of taking things which have been already given to them, not so much busy with the details, but going deeper and more profound into the matter on the basis of the details which they hear from others, or they read in a sefer, or they mekabel b'klal from teachers or k'etzah b'zeh, or they have a special gift of isaskis ba'oimek. They take the profundity and the depth of the message that says to that particular individual, and in general to what you might call mankind or to the world. Or they're given more to the union of pilpul and discussion, which is more shy to the moyach habina, and therefore they deal with the seichel in its length and its breadth. The truth of the matter is that oirach has got a certain shaykhus to chokhmah, because chokhmah, being as it is the rashis hagilui, it's got the ability to go down further from level to level in different ways of illustration. Mashin roichav means to break it up into details, but that doesn't really add any new dimensions in the seichel, only all sorts of details that come out of the prat that's already been given. Even from oirach means you can go into all sorts of different levels of understanding that, as it were, on a higher level, a lower level. Well, that ability really comes from chokhmah. However, oirach and reichav are more in the discussion of the matter, in the brain. So he said some people have that gift, that chush of busyness in seichel. Kafi oifen hazeh, according to that, nasa ishtanus b'choymer klei moyach shaloi, there occurs a difference, a change in the whole makeup of the choymer of the klei moyach of that particular person. Like we pointed out in detail last night, that some people even changed the whole size of their brain and the different creases in the brain, etc. etc. Days Galus Yesero Mi Anefesh Yochol Liye Shagam Im Enu Kli Betchilo Nasa Alidei Ze B'chinas Kli. In other words, that if he continuously, as you might say, with Hasmoda, continuously, time after time, busies himself with muskoles, and he's even pnimi, the oil of seichel is always entering the kli, then that can change and alter the kli mibefnim in a way that there actually occurs a miler in his whole ability to appreciate seichel, and he changes so that he becomes more of a kli than he was at the beginning. And like we see, people who are really busy and give themselves away to understanding, they improve and they become more shatut than they were earlier. So that we see is that's the pnimi affecting, but the illusion is that's only chotzi, it's only like half. It's not going to alter the brain in absolute entirety. Davkin asa choyma hamoyach shaloi b'chinas kli lakabel. Akamesh kosev b'maki macher shezeu inyan ma she'oyer makif mitzatzeach kli mibachutz. So now, kamosh alidei, or that's already a second inyan, or that sentence that began with kamosh alidei, or that's already the biur in the other lotion. That the Yoer Makif is metatzeach chotzeach kli miba chutz, and this is a principle that's mentioned on many occasions in the Chassidus of the Rebbe Rashab, and we've noticed that we've met up with it before in these lessons. I think we had it in Samech Tes in one place, and we may have even mentioned it briefly in the second Maimah here, but we didn't really deal with it in any length, and here it's also only mentioned Bakitza. What does it mean, oil makif in seichel? What do you mean by saying oil makif in seichel? I mean, seichel is a koyach which is already nimshuk from moyach hachok to bina. Seichel is already a koyach pnimi in its very essence. How could you imagine oil makif in seichel? So the Rebbe says that there's different ways that you can give a person a seichel. You can give him a lechatchila, a seichel, which is measured according to his brain and to his, what you size up to be his abilities, probably accurately, and therefore you give him the seichel which will enter his brain and work away mibafnim, with unity with the brain and with his understanding of it. However, there's a way that you can give him certain inyonim which are beyond his ability to really understand. Not that they're completely and utterly beyond his ability, because in that case you'll just break him. I mean, he'll get confused, absolutely. But you see that he's got certain gifts, but you give him which is still beyond his ability to really appreciate it. B'pnimis, b'toich hamoyach, b'fnim. And that's called, the gavihim, a seichel mufla. In other words, it's elevated from the word pele. What then, so enough, Rashi brings down in this week's parsha, but again to loy nifleisi, Rashi says mechuse. The word pillar means something which is covered from you, and that means it's a little bit higher than your ability. And what that does is it knocks you from the outside, literally, of the moyach. It's sort of, how do you call it? And what you might say that what you're aiming for with a thing like that, as the Rebbe Rashab writes in another place, that you're aiming to slightly break the person with that. In other words, you want to make him almost a little bit broken, how do you call it, broken-hearted, that he can't understand certain matters. And Halidei, when he gets that kilo things hit him on the outside of his moich, and he can't bring them b'fnim, well, that, as it were, breaks, as it were, the what you might call the coarseness of his moich, and helps to make him more of a kli. In other words, it gets rid of that other half that you can't reach from b'fnim. So we see from this that you have to have both in yonim. Then that's why the Eitz Chaim uses the expression chotzi akli mib'fnim, chotzi akli bechutz. And as we said, we're not talking that you're measuring in centimeters or in millimeters or how much of his brain is inside, how much is on bechutz. We're talking about inyonim ruchniim. And what we mean is that with however much you give a person concepts of which will enter his mind, but pneumius, you'll only get with that the change, the most maximum change, only a certain percentage. Maybe a very significant percentage, but it won't be more than what we considered hard. But it'll have a big effect on his brain. However, you want to affect the whole of his brain and be mahapachim, mamish mina kotza la kotza, that it'll be a completely different mind altogether than what he was from the beginning, both bifnim and kilu, that crust that you can't really get to bifnim, then the way is to break him a little bit. It's a very interesting concept. You give him certain inyonim which cause him to be, as a word, b'marirus, that he's not able to understand. Now, why do I use the word marirus? Because if you give him too much or little, like I said earlier, you'll just break him, and he'll just, become miyuish that he can't understand inyonim b'klal. What you do is you go a little bit higher, and he becomes, as it were, wondrously stirred by these inyonim, but embittered that he's not able to get at them. So therefore, what does he do? He throws all of his power, his mind, to try and draw out of himself. Well, that breaks the outer part that you can't reach from the inside. It breaks, so you might say, well, maybe that's what the Rav has to do first, and then on the other. So it's much better that you have to do both things. That there has to be ashpor v'der pnimius, but yachadim zeh, there also has to be a certain trace which you leave beyond him, which will, as it were, slightly madden him, and he'll want to get at that, unable to do so at the beginning. But that brokenness will break the outer, what you might call hardness of the kli, and make everything, as it were, a kli, so that the ability to come from bifni will improve. And eventually, it'll become kulei panim. It won't be just chotzi. That's yesh lema is the beer of the whole inyan. Therefore, it's always been our policy here in the yeshiva, to give you an example, that we always learn in these shurim inyanim which are a little bit slightly higher than the what you might call the day-to-day appreciation of the talmidim and their ability to know certain inyanim and siddhas. For example, this whole inyan of chotzi mibufnim and chotzi mibufutz is not something that you can claim that you're all familiar with it. And so by going into a matter of that sort, and in the whole atmosphere of these Maimorim, which is very elevated, well, that causes a person on the one hand to realize that there's a lot of things he doesn't know yet, and that slightly breaks him and causes him a beetle. And yet on the other hand, he does get certain on him, and he brings them b'fnim, and acting together with that general tzibrochkeit and the challenge of what he's already got b'fnim, then gradually you make him into a kli to understand, so that you gradually bring him to understand and to have the right attitude, as you might say, to know that on the one hand he doesn't know anything, and yet to be tremendously thankful for what he is managing to grasp. And that's why we always, and over the years, one or two people have said to me, why do you learn these Sheikhim from the Rebbe Rashab, with these guys, they're not really up to that yet. So that's my answer. That's what the Rebbe says himself in Kama Mekimis. He considers that you have to teach the Talmudim certain inyonim which are mufla. He said that dafki nase chayma amoyach shalei b'chinas kli lekabel, and that's mibachutz. That's the yoyah machiv which is mitzatzeach hakli mibachutz. Harei mikol zeh muvan sheyesh kishu v'chibu godel nefesh imagov. From that, from all these illustrations that we've brought, then we see a tremendous connection of the nefesh with the guf, to the point that it's an absolute connection, and that they interact, and they can have a shpur of improvement, an ashpur, a ma'aliusa, of making better and bringing to a much greater tachlis, one on the one on the other. So the Rebbe says, Asher ba'emes hu dova nifla ma'id. Well, that fact that the guf and the nefesh can join together with such a actas, that they become absolutely inseparable to the point that they interact significantly one on the other and alter one on the other, alter their essential ability to be function, each in their own way, both oyer and kli. So the Rebbe said that's a dova nifla me'id, that's the most amazing matter. Shaharei nefesh hu ruchni v'aguf gashmi. I mean, those are two essential opposites. Be'etzem mamahus ve'eich yischabro v'yiskashu ze'im. And how is it possible for them to be able to join up one with the other? So that's the taich of the bracha that we say every day after a person is able to open the neikvei haguf in letting out the paselas. When a person goes to the bathroom, then he makes a bracha, reifei kol basar, mafli la say. And so the Meforshei HaShulchan Aruch over there, masbir of why do we say mafli la say? Because the whole kesher of the guf with the neshama, the etzem ability for those two to be together in such a way that the nefesh is, for its health, is dependent on the body. Reifei kol basar. Well, that is only in the koyach of the Eibishter, who is mafli la say, and therefore he says dova niflama. The Eibishter, how he is completely beyond the gevul, he can do such a ayin. However, we're going to add now here in this little passage, we're going to add a more, what you might call, seichelic explanation to how does the nefesh actually form a connection with the guf. Ach hine be'emes etzem haneshama, the very essence of the neshama, mushlelasi legamrei mikol toya chayim gashmi. He said the etzem haneshama, that means the neshama, how she is beyond the koiches of the nefesh, chokma, bina, das, and the sheva midas, and the three levushim. But the nefesh which is beyond the actual gilui in the koiches and the evrei haguf, well, that's called the etzem haneshama. Well, that is completely negated, absolutely, from any description which leads to physical life, or physical chayas. We had to call it physical life force, of in any way relating to the Averim of the Guf HaGashmi. Ve'eino be'eret lispoil mimikra Guf char v'eina gufani. Like we pointed out earlier, the union of the Guf and the Nefesh is such that the Nefesh is affected by tzar and by oine gufni. So the Rebbe said that the etzem haneshama, the very essence of the Nefesh, is beyond that type of thing altogether. Now here's a very fascinating remark. It says the Rebbe rak b'yisurim ruchniim ki yisurei gehenim u'ka'oine ruchni b'gan eden u'ka'hai gavna. So I said that the etzem hanefesh is moved off from tzar v'oine gufni, that it could bodily tzar and bodily oinig. However, he said that the etzem hanefesh is able to feel tzar from Yisurim in Gehenim or oinig ruchni in Gan Eden. Now that's a very fascinating chiddush, dova, to say that the etzem haneshama, which is mushlal from any shaychus to Chaim Gashmiim, that should be able to cloud, be shaychus to the union of Yisurim in Gehenim. So Einachanami, what it means to say is that something which is pure oinig or heipach oinig ruchni, then the etzem haneshama is able to experience it, even though it's moved on mihakoiches, it's able to experience it. But it's a big chiddush to say. Well, I don't know if it's a big chiddush, but it's very interesting to the reader to put that into his whole hierarchy of the different levels of the nefesh, to say that the etzem hanefesh which is Lamaila me Shachas to the Guf, experienced the Yisurim in Gehenna or La'eva, or the Einig in Gan Eden. Maybe the Einig in Gan Eden I can maybe picture it. Or was it the Yisurim in Gehenna? Wie kommt der Nefesh, how it's Mushlam, Chaim Gashmim, Etzem, Anishoma, how does that come to punishment in Gehenna? We come to say it. The whole meaning of the Nefesh Elokis, I mean, who carries out an Aveda? For that Aveda there should be a punishment in Gehenna. That there's Magia, Chas v'Shalom, Yisurim in Gehenna. Who gets Yisurim in Gehenna? It's an interesting side. I mean, it's hard to say, or it would appear hard to say, that the Nefesh Elokis gets Yisurim in Gehenna. The Nefesh Elokis didn't do an Aveda. The Nefesh Elokis remains dovuk all the time in the Rebishter. And the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya Perikov Dalet at the end that even when an Aveira occurs, the Nefesh Elokis is faithful to the Rebishter. The Nefesh Elokis doesn't become involved in the Aveira. It shrays and protests against the Aveira. And the Nefesh Abami is to say the Nefesh Abami gets punished in Gehenna. Yeah, for the Avedas, I mean, Nefesh Abami is sent down specially as a shliach for the Eibushter to tempt the mensch. So, if the Nefesh Abami is, how do you call it, tempts the mensch, and he gives in, then, the Nefesh Abami is hard to imagine that he gets Yisurim in Gehenna because the mensch gave in to him. So I asked this all to Shaila, who is the mensch? Where are the men? It's not the Nefesh Elokis, and it's not the Nefesh Abba, not the Nefesh Abba Homi. I can see it bothers everybody tremendously, the whole Shaila. And certain members looked to me as that they would be prepared to, they would be preferring to be shloching or something. But nobody seems to even have dreamt that there's any such shaila. So I says, shaila, who actually gets it? To use the expression, who cops it in Gehenna? So what do we have to say? There's the Nefesh Sikli, there's like a third Nefesh in the middle. He's Enough and Seichel. And it's put down in Tanya, even though the author of it doesn't mention it. He doesn't say there's such an effort. But it's pretty clear in Tanya that he holds that there is such thing. And that's what makes all the decisions. That's what tells the man this is what reasoning is, and this is what you should do. So it says either you go according to the Nefesh Elokis or you go according, it's like a referee. And it says either you go this way or that way. So if he says you go this way, then the mensch is his Nefesh HaSichli is. And maybe his Nefesh HaBamis does too much of a good job. Maybe Chatz said Nefesh HaBamis tempts him too much. Wasn't meant to go so far. But that's, it's a bit of a deichach to say. Of Ulai. Yeah. He couldn't tell us that who is really the mensch and who is really suffering in Gehenna. So that the Etzem HaNefesh Shelamayla Me'akoiches could suffer the Yisurim in Gehenna. I mean, we can just say Etzem HaNefesh couldn't do it. Avela, was it the Shachas B'Klal? Ma Kesher for it. So, a fascinating Shaila, and at least the more general Shaila, who Takir does sin, and who Takir is due to the Yisurim in Gehenna. And there is Yisurim Takir, because he says Yisurim Ruchni. So they're not Yisurim Gufnim, they're not Yisurim Gashim, they're Yisurim Ruchni. So what we have to say, L'chayra, the Ein Chanami, the Nefesh Elokis itself, doesn't become involved in an Avera. However, let's say a mensch falls on a rock, he falls on a stone, he trips over something on the ground. What tripped, what actually throws things out of gear is the foot or the leg or whatever it is got caught. But it throws afterwards everything, and even the rosh, but had nothing to do with that piece of stone on the ground whatsoever, is completely moved over. Maybe he's a meter plus something higher than that altogether, and yet nonetheless, when that falls, that lower part of the body falls, then the head also falls almost without any ability to prevent it. In most cases, no ability whatsoever to prevent itself falling, and it could even be damaged, and quite heavily, from the fall. Maybe even more than what the damage has occurred to the thing that made everything fall. And so we're coming up soon to Shabbos Tshuva, and after for Shabbos Tshuva says, Shuva Yisrael LaHashem Elokecha, or Ad Hashem Elokecha, Hi Koshalta Ba'aveh, because you slipped with you had a slip up in your oven. So who is Yisrael? Yisrael is the high name for Yid. When you say Yisrael, you mean an Yid mitzad his high madrigas and his nefesh elokis. So how can you say Shuva Yisrael? You have to do Shuva Ki Koshalta Ba'aveh Necha. And it goes like grinding stones around here. So, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, and all the Rebbeim answer more or less that. And they say that the high levels of the Nefesh HaLekis are beyond the oven. What got into the oven was the Nefesh HaSiklis and the Nefesh HaPamis. They may be worked on a whole base for the oven. But when they fall, then since the Nefesh HaLekis also got a shaykhs with the Nefesh HaPamis, but there are kosher, there's a kesher between them, is when they fall, they kill, as it were, they draw down into the fall also the Nefesh HaElokis. What's Lafisa would be the biur, that not that the Nefesh HaElokis suffers the Yisurei Gehenna to be punished for the Avera. We can't say that Indian in Gehenna is a punishment. No, you can't take the call. I'm terribly sorry.
No, I'm turning it off.
You can't take the call.
I'm turning it off.
I'll turn it off here. Why do you have to run out to turn it off? And from now on, you'll turn off the telephone before you come into the class, okay? And now you're doing the same with this. As a matter of fact, the Indian from the Yisurei Gehenna in that regard won't be a punishment, because the Nefesh HaLekis didn't, and particularly the Etzem and the Nefesh HaLekis, Shalomayla Megillah and the Kohen, for sure didn't sin. Now, so what's the Yisurim? That there's a wound, and like you call a stain, occurs through the activities of the Nefesh HaSiklis and the Nefesh HaPamis to a certain extent, and they cause a wound in the what do you call it? But the wound is not just a wound, it's like a cleavage of undesirable material onto the actual Nefesh HaLekis without it wanting it, but that happens. Just like you can't stop your head falling if your body falls. And the Indian from Yisurim is to remove that lichluk from the Nefesh HaLekis. And remember, that's a form of Yisurim. Just let's say, for example, to give you a very gashmistic dugma, let's say you've got a mat or something that's got a lot of dust in it. And the dust is not really the mat. It doesn't really belong in the mat in a way. Mats are not made for dust. They're made for beauty or for whatever. Well, the only way you can clean the mat is by beating the dust out. In other words, that there's a certain necessity to purify these improper stains on the etzem of the Nefesh HaLekis. And that is a suffering for the Nefesh HaLekis. She has to undergo that cleansing. So, Lafisa Kumto is that the whole union from Gehenna, in that understanding, is not just the union of what you might call retribution. It's a union of cleanliness, what you might call nikui, or how do you call it? Zichuk. Kain yesh lema b'derech hefsher. And the same with the union from the Tainu in Gan Eden, but the Nefesh HaLekis earns, as it were, a toisefus union with the Eibishter through the efforts made in the direction of Kedusha, through the union of the Nefesh HaSichlis and the Mashal Tiviyas. And so that ultimately leads us to some svara that there must be some inyan that the Etzem HaNefesh also carries in some very indirect way, but that needs an explanation. And I'm assuming I'm not in the mood at the moment for the explanation. When I say I'm not in the mood, that needs some explanation that the higher aspects of the Nefesh HaLekis could have, or they should have, or they may have, or had an effect on the whole situation, and that they bear a certain responsibility that they didn't. And that's Torah's view. What sort of responsibility do they have? And how does that relate to the koachos which are actually in the body? What it means is that the Etzem HaNefesh is not really in the usual makeup of the body. It's like separate, moved up. It's like a head that doesn't really involve with the lower Eivorim at all. Whatever the Rebbe Kunta is that Etzem part of the Neshama, which is not shy to anything gufni, on the Masha Bo HaNefesh Beis Chabras B'Klei HaGuf, whatever the Nefesh does enter into all the kelim of the Guf, Acha Guf Mekabel Chiyusei V'Shifoi Rak Me'er V'Chayes HaRuchni, until there is this union which we described before, that the body lives mamish from the spiritual highest and the spiritual influence that it gets from the Nefesh HaLekis. Mamish, and they become one Inyan, absolutely, they unite together, absolutely. Canal, it's not the Etzem of the Neshama, which we just described. Ela hu beginnes ha'ora, di ha'ora mimeno. It's only a luminescence, of a luminescence. In other words, first of all, there's a luminescence from the Etzem into a certain madrega, and then there's a further luminescence mizeh, which is actually meya into the koachos of the guf, which means that the Etzem Mahus HaNeshama remains mubdal altogether, and so that lessens the kasha. How can they really come together? Because what is actually entering the body, I don't say that it gets rid of it entirely, but it lessens the kasha a lot, that it's only like a luminescence, only like a radiation from the Nefesh, not the Etzem HaNefesh at all, which actually enters the Klei HaGuf, and therefore it's only a inyan of ha'ora chitonius, legabi di amitius mahus HaNefesh. Amamela says the Rebbe, ain't zeh beginnes mahus of atzmusa, ela ha'ora da'ora v'hainu, rach ha'reiseho, only her luminescences, v'hispashtusa, and a form of spiritual expansion, ha'chitoni, which is only an outside and surface level, ma'uid, very much. Shenikra rak gilui ha'ora diha, or it's only called like a revelation of a luminescence, well, that's what enters the Klei HaGuf. It's easier to understand how the Guf and the Nefesh are able to come together, because that Nefesh has undergone a tremendous withdrawal of its own Etzem, and it's given off at least two madregas only of radiations of luminescence, bilvad, into the inyan of the Guf, which means that it's only, as it were, like a separate ha'ora from the Nefesh B'Etzem, which actually is meya in those koachos of the Guf that we mentioned before, even the higher koachos of Chokmah Bina and the Sheva Midas with the ganze arichet. And therefore he says, if we take an example, if we take the revelation of the koach hatanua, of the power to move that there is in the eivorim of the body, that each eiv has got its ability to move. You have to make all sorts of unlimited numbers of movements, so that's called the koach hatanua. In any given physical pa'ula with any limb may make, if we take, for example, the hand, that's not the etzem chayes of the koach ha'pa'ula, which is in the hand. It goes out of the hand and enters a Yeah? A other entity, or when I say enters, it affects another entity outside the actual hand. In other words, for example, if you throw something into the air, I think we've discussed this before in other classes, then the actual koach, the tenua of the hand leaves the hand and it enters b'derech makif, the thing that you're throwing, and causes it to go up in the air. Because the nature of a stone is not to go in the air, or a ball or anything. Its nature is to fall downwards. So there's a power that's gone out of the hand and enters. That's called a ha'oraniv delos. It's not the etzem power that the hand has, but it's a shining forth or a radiance of the hand which has gone out into the entity, and that's what we call a ha'oraniv delos. It's only a ha'ora, and in addition to that, it's niv delos. Mamir said the Rebbe. יש ביד מעל זוג גבדתו, הרי זה רק אורם, דרך בעצם, וזה שכוסו, and that's what we say in davening, or זה שאומרים, על כל שבח מעשיו דרכו. What do we say there? Very nice, very good. Right near the end of the first part of the Birchas Krishma, in davening, we say Tis Porei Hashem Elokeinu b'shamayim mimal v'oretz mitachas al kol shevach ma'aseyo yodecha. So we say that means that we're praising. We are able to praise it because it's coming towards us. Yeah, the shevach, the praise of the ma'aseyo decha kaviyochel. We're calling the emphasis ma'aseyo dayim. Why do we call it ma'aseyo dayim? Because it's the horror nivdelas which is mislavish into the bria in order to come down to into the Olam and eventually into the Olam Hagashmi. V'lochein Atzilas Beklal Nikra Odom Da'asiya. V'chamesh kosu b'mochim acher b'drush Rishima Chakicha Chatziva Asiya. What we'll leave that a Milchem for further episodes. As that's quite complex and detailed reference to a whole discussion in Siddur, so we'll leave that for this evening. And suffice it to say that what it means is that even Atzilus is considered a Ha'ora Nivdeles, even though Atzilus is still Elokus. Of it's considered because from Malchus to Atzilus you already have the Ashpah into bringing about. So the latter levels of Atzilus at least actually become the koach, which makes Yesh Mi'ayin of the Olam Espriya Yitzirah Asiya is a sign that they're already shot to giving forth a whole upon the koach Hanivdal. Therefore, the Gabi much higher, even Atzilus is called Asiya. That's basically the point. Good. All right, my gentlemen, so have a good evening, and you can take a little break and then we'll have a Be'ez Hashem. And we'll see Be'ez Hashem next week. Maybe we'll make a little sort of a sheer closing instead of just, we'll see how it goes. We'll see what works out. So, are you going to daven Marav or are you going?
I've already done Marav.
Huh?
I've already done Marav.
Oh, you daven Marav. Right then. Good. Okay. Good.